Do you know what? I think that one of the main reasons that I managed to get my job doing what I'm doing now is because I went out and I did it for myself, first of all. And when I went to National Geographic, I did it with a tape in hand saying, this is what I can do, this is the films that I can make. And they didn't really have to take a massive punt on me because I'd already proved that I was capable of making fully fledged programs. And we learn much more from making mistakes than we do from doing things right. So by going out and trying to make films, by getting it wrong, by finding out the things that you need and the things that you don't need, by getting into the edit and going, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't get a close-up of this, or I can't believe I didn't get this part of the story, and making sure that the next time around you do, you learn all the lessons that are going to make it much, much easier for you to follow this as a career later in life. I think television has an enormous part to play in getting across the conservation message. You know, the films that I make are not necessarily conservation films, most of them, but conservation is an element to them. And I think that that's important because if you make something that is purely conservation, the vast majority of people that watch it are already going to agree with your message. They're already going to be people that have heard what you've got to say and that agree with you already. The trick really is getting to speak to the vast majority of people around the planet who may not have heard about these issues and may not agree with you. And the way you do that is by being practical, by being pragmatic, and by realising what people want and what people are intrigued by. And quite a lot of the time that's adventure and excitement and jeopardy and all of these kinds of things that we try our best to get into our television programmes. There is no doubt that they can have effect. Using that kind of knowledge of what people want to see, we've got programmes on issues that otherwise you'd never be able to make programs on, and we've got them shown in China and Taiwan and the Philippines and Indonesia and places where, you know, a lot of wildlife conservation measures are absolutely key. So I think it has a tremendous role to play. There's also, purely and simply, even if you completely take out any conservation message from wildlife television programming, just the fact that, you know, the work that, for example, David Attenborough has done over the last 60 years has had an enormous effect in just getting people to love nature, wildlife, the environment. And the people that love nature are the exact same people that are going to want to save it. So, you know, a lot of people have over the years criticised David Attenborough for not doing enough, you know, pure environmental conservation work. But actually what he's achieved by making programs that just make people enthused with the wonder of wildlife has achieved far, far more than he ever would have done if he'd gone out purely to make programs about, you know, diminishing riparian habitats in Brazil. You know, I mean, people are more intrigued by beauty and by wonder, and you can probably achieve more by knowing that. Really tricky to think of what my favourite wildlife documentary that I've worked on is. There were a couple, particularly I think Expedition Borneo, which was the first expedition series that I was involved in, and directly off the back of that, once we'd finished with that, we had meetings with this massive organisation, the ISN Sabah, who at the time were both the administrators of the country's national parks and also of logging, which was kind of bizarre that one organisation could handle the two things. But we met with the head of the ISN Sabah, and he sat in an office with us and went, yeah, absolutely, this reserve that you've been working in, I've seen your program, it's amazing, we're going to get it protected. The next thing we knew, it had Class 4 reserve status, which was the highest reserve status that they could have in that country. And it felt like we'd done something more than just a television program. It felt like we'd actually made a difference. So that was a brilliant thing to work on. All of those expedition series, you know, being in situations where you can absolutely hand on heart say, I am the first human being that's ever been in this place. I'm the first human being that's ever come down into this cave, first person that's ever summited this mountain, first person that's ever held this particular species of animal in my hand, or been the first to know it, recognise it, name it as something new. Those are incredible moments in anyone's life. My worst moment in the industry, crikey, I've actually had quite a lot. I've had some, probably the most humiliating was quite early in my career. I was working for National Geographic's television channel, and I was making an expedition program in the deserts of Sinai, and we'd been going for about 3 days without any water. It was 45 degrees, steaming hot, completely self-supported, huge great big backpacks, and came to our first water, which looked like quite a decent sized pond. And I just went, oh, and fell into it, and it ended up being a rocky puddle that was about that deep, and I split my head open, and there was blood going everywhere, and we were in the middle of nowhere on quite a serious expedition. I very nearly killed myself on camera. The whole thing was recorded. I then had to shave my head in this big semicircle here to uncover the wound, which we stitched up, and then the only thing that we had to cover it with was a panty pad. So I spent the whole of the rest of the expedition trying to look rugged and tough with an Always Ultra sellotaped to my forehead. And then it started getting infected, so my whole face swelled up like a balloon. I had tiny little slitty eyes and this big thing wrapped around my head. And throughout the whole thing, still trying to act like I was the big tough adventurer. It was awful. I think single-mindedness is probably the most important thing that you can have. You know, nowadays there are so many possibilities and so many distractions that it's very tempting to throw yourself into too many of them. But the people who really succeed in any field, unless you're Stephen Fry, unless you're some incredible polymath, the people who really triumph are the ones who find one thing and they become the absolute best at it. They focus on it to the exclusion of everything else. They know from minute one that that's what they want to achieve and do everything they can towards that one singular goal. And I think that particularly in something really competitive like wildlife filmmaking, that's what you want to do. If you've decided that you want to be a wildlife cameraman, then everything from now works towards that one goal of becoming the very best wildlife cameraman there is. And you know, look at people like Simon King, Gordon Buchanan, Chris Packham, you know, Doug Allen, the people who have triumphed at it, and see how they did it. Most of them would have started from scratch as an apprentice to someone else, and they will have gone out, and every spare hour they've had, they will be working their trade. They will be learning how to be the absolute best at it. And you know, eventually, if that is what you want to do, then you will succeed. Do you know what? The elements of natural history that are most viewed now and that get the most pickup across the world have mostly been filmed on someone's phone and are now stuck on YouTube. And the pure fact of the matter is that we're heading into a very strange time when everyone is walking around with a film camera in their pocket. And all of a sudden, you know, a few years ago, everyone was talking non-stop about the fact that it was all super high def and everything's going to be in 8K and done with incredible detail. But more and more, people are digesting media through their laptops and through their phones, through quality that nobody would ever have considered watching 5 years ago. It's completely common now to watch that kind of video footage. The thing that's remarkable about something that's been filmed on someone's phone is that quite often it can be situations where someone has been present at an element of behaviour that is just pure chance. You know, it's something that will happen 1 in a billion times. And you know, you can put a cameraman in the field for 8 months filming one kind of animal, and he still has a lot less chance of seeing that one ridiculous, hyper-real moment than hundreds of thousands of people passing through that same area who just happen to have their phones on when the crazy thing happens. More and more, that is how we are going to experience wildlife footage. There are going to be more and more programs that are compiles of things that have been found on YouTube that are, you know, crazy animals doing something strange. And we are going to, I think, discover an awful lot more about animal behaviour that way as well.